right, guys, it's another episode of the Fearless Pursuit of Freedom podcast, and today's guest is another high-level entrepreneur out of the Southern California area. I'd like to welcome you guys, Donald Ross.
How we doing, Brandon?
Pretty good. I appreciate you coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, I just told everybody where you live, but so what you do, why you got into it, and how long you've been doing it, and the goals and visions for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So live out in Southern California, out on Orange County border, LA County border. And when I first started, I was trying to do this 15 years ago, made an attempt at it. Wasn't the greatest attempt at it, and came back around when I got out of the military back in 2014. And basically that's the point where I started. And reasons for me to start really was to be able to see my daughter out in Wisconsin a little bit more and fly back there. So I live in Southern California, but I actually have a partner back in southeastern Wisconsin. We have a brokerage together, the investment firm together. So fly back there, do our deals back there. Oftentimes I don't actually see any of the deals. She's out there going on appointments and viewing them. And we also have a team behind us, and we can talk about that later. But really trying to build the wholesale business to something that we can, have and build our back-end rental portfolios, things like that, help some people out with that. And ultimately just get me away from, at the time, a job that I had out here with the Veteran Affairs Department, and I was a contracts officer, and trying to be able to enjoy family a little bit more and be able to be present a little bit more, because I was stuck in that Southern California traffic in the morning and in the evening, and not going to games and practices and things like that. So That's the main, starting point was definitely for the family and the kids. And then we went from there.
Awesome, man. So you told me a little bit beforehand, back in the early 2000s, you were doing some on the construction side of building custom homes, and you didn't like it. So now you're back. You've built this, from what I can tell so far, pretty badass CRM that you've called Beast Mode there. But tell us a little bit about it. I know a lot of people know of the platform Podio, but you use integration apps to build out a system that's, so far, I've discovered pretty easily to use. And Podio before, honestly, I signed up for Podio like a year and a half ago, and I never touched it because I didn't understand it, and it was just too confusing. But you got some training programs in there. Anyways, you go for it. Tell us about it, why you did it, and kind of the back end of managing the people that you brought on to. Well, you've done the training videos, but I feel like it's not just you. There's people responding to my emails pretty quickly. So.
Yeah. So back before I went to college, I wanted to actually go to college for computer science. Unfortunately, made some bad decisions when I was in high school and couldn't get into colleges that I wanted to be to. So I left to the military after that, and wound up getting degrees, and I have my MBA now. But I started it back in 2013, 14, after I had kind of played with some apps through some of the other guys that we may know in the industry. And when I started playing with it, it was something that interested me enough to where it was like, hey, I can do this thing. I can learn this. YouTube and talking back and forth with some other guys that were building platforms and are in the industry building platforms at this point as well. We kind of kicked it off, and we were sharing ideas and learning how to code. And I know that's geek stuff to some people, but it was, fun to me. And it was something that I could do, and it wasn't, the typical, I don't want to get up and do this anymore. It was something that actually interested me, and I was having to try to stop myself at midnight from keeping going.
Yeah.
So, I started building stuff for myself, really, and just trying to get some automation in our own business as we were starting it up. And then I found out after I started playing with it that there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do. And if you could track your numbers, it was a lot easier to scale and build things out. And from that, I kind of built all the way down to the most complicated thing you could possibly want. And I thought it was the greatest thing ever, but you couldn't get a team to use it because you couldn't teach them how to use it. Mm-hmm. So we kind of moved away and scrapped that idea and was like, okay, we need automation. We need follow-up. We need to be able to track our numbers. How do we do that, but keep it simple? And that's kind of where we're at this point with Beast Mode and having the property app basically be your main one app that you're working your sellers. All your comments are in one section. And then you just have your hyperlinks to jump through the appointment, offer, contract, and sold deal sections. That just makes it super easy as a business owner when you're not in Podio every day. You're able to jump in and kind of look at a person's file, if you will, and you can see all the comments and everything that's happened from start to finish all in one area, not having to bounce around from 4, 5, 6 apps. And that becomes the issue with a lot of them is you've got everything segregated out in different apps and you're chasing where it's at, what was said, and it just becomes a pain in the butt. So trying to keep it simple, but still have that automation. So the text message follow-up sequences and RVM, along with every time you're clicking buttons, it's tracking when those buttons were clicked and by who. So you now know by week how many appointments were set, how many were completed, how many offers, contracts, and sold deals. And you'd be able to basically do the numbers backwards and figure out where you need to be to hit the goal numbers.
Yeah. Awesome. So you've got automated follow-up systems, and I was messing around with it the other day, but when a phone call comes in and it's missed, it auto sends out text messages. Is that easy buttoned app, has that been launched, or explain that?
Sure. So we have a secondary company that we call Easy Button REI. And what that is really support services. So you've got your RVM, you've got your 3-cent list source accounts, you've got some apps that help with building cost as far as your repair costs and things like that. Skip tracing, things like that are all built out of that platform. And we found that now that we have 400 and I think it's 30 now, roughly, members that are on the Beast Mode platform, they had a lot of questions on the services to support the business. So we took the numbers that we had, started going and finding, the industry that we use, a lot of the same platforms or tools are used. We went and talked to them. My background is negotiating multi-million-dollar government contracts for a decade for the Marine Corps. So took that experience, went out and talked to some of these companies and renegotiated pricing and then offered that to the members. So the Easy Button is part of that. And the RVM that we have is something that the people are able to log in, and that's part of that follow-up. So that follow-up ringless voicemail, that's part of that Easy Button stuff. And that helps members basically be able to get discounts and still use the same platform and keep it all in one area.
Yeah. So what RVM service and skip tracing services are built into that?
IDI is skip tracing. So that's bulk skip tracing. The RVM is actually ours. So we went out and worked with some developers and built out a platform of our own. That one allows you basically to have the drip, but it also allows you to have the bulk dropping. So normally we charge 4.5 cents a drop, and that allows the member to get the pricing that normally you'd have to buy 100,000 drops to get some of those prices. And so we charge that. They're able to upload a list and basically create a campaign. And when someone calls back, we've got it to where you press 1 or 9. If they press 9, it builds out a do not call list automatically in the platform. And that's there for the next list that you upload. So it's not calling people that have pressed that 9 button. And then if they press 1 and call in, it forwards into a call rail number and comes into the platform. So we're able to kind of make it an easy automated sequence to drop large RVM and still bring it into the platform. So you're not chasing back and forth and trying to import things.
Yeah. And it's got mass texting as well, I thought I saw.
Yeah, so we've got it set up where typically with the texting, in order to be compliant, you've got to have consent. So we've set it up to where you can do mass text of 100 in the platform. They've got to be people that are in the property lead app, which would mean that they've called in, you've talked to them, and then you can basically create a view or set a view of the 100 people you want to blast to, and then you can send it out. But the big key thing there is if you're blasting to them and you have consent, especially with the blast. 1 at a time is a whole different story, but when you're doing a blast, you've got to have that consent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we had some political issues with that lately. The last campaign of, I don't know how many he was sending out, but I can only assume like 10 million or more, but it was intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, there's some platforms out there. Like, I think Sherpa is one of them where they'll text 1 at a time. You upload a list, create a templated text message, and then you can send out a text 1 at a time. It takes a human to click each button 1 at a time, but that's compliant right now. So
really,
you got to know the laws and got to know where you can go gray area and what you're willing to take on risk. Cause it's, some of the other things I've seen out there is, well, it's not been in case law yet. So it's technically, you don't know you're going to be okay if someone comes after you. you're not. And in business, you're never going to know all the time that you're going to be. You got to be able to take some risks and be okay with those risks. If you're not, don't do it.
Yeah, I recently told my VAs to stop mass texting because I've had probably twice a week, I'll have somebody text me back that they're going to turn me into whoever. And I'm like, man, I know what I'm doing is probably on the gray area, but like you said, there's no case law to prove what's going to happen. And at the beginning, I was like, I know I'm doing something a little on the gray area, but I'll just play the ignorance card. At the end of the day, I decided to turn it off because people are just beating me up over it.
Yeah, we know a couple of guys, the text messages, RVM, and even cold calling. We know someone personally, cold calling especially. If you don't do it right, you can get yourself in some heat. And if you're doing it on a large scale, it becomes expensive quick. So just being able to kind of, okay, do I want to take this risk? Do I not want to take this risk? And what is the outcome? Can I make X amount? And even if it happens to come and hit me, am I okay? Some of these, I know the cold calls personally, they got enough cold calls going out to where it was not worth the risk. They had to do some compliance type stuff. So we've been looking into the RVM a lot lately, making sure that we're legal there. As of right now, we're in the clear. Florida is the only state that's passed anything on the RVM. You've got to have consent to drop the RVM there. But our platform does require that now at this point, where you have to say, yes, I have consent for any Florida numbers if you're dropping them. And if you say yes, it'll drop. If you say no, it'll skip the Florida numbers. Yeah. And you just kind of got to play ball with what the rules are. It is what it is. It's ever changing.
Well, that's cool that you fall into the laws on the back end, because a lot of people wouldn't even think about it or do like me and be like, we'll just see where it goes. But, I don't have many people in my CRM yet, but it's good to know that I can still do the mass texting as long as we've got that, and that got them in the system and they've have been the one to call into us. But so tell us about, because again, I know it's just not you over there, and somebody's responding to my emails pretty quickly. How's your team? How much of a pain in the butt was it to build it? What are the things and hurdles that you've had to overcome to get there? And let's go into that.
Sure. Right now, there are 2 VAs. So one is full-time, one is part-time. The one that's typically responding to the emails and some of the chats and things like that often is the full-time VA that I have. She actually was part of the investment company, and we have her over on the REI Automation and the chats and things like that. She's got kind of a procedure that she follows based on what is said in the emails and things like that. Obviously, we've built out, and I will tell you probably 80% of the traffic that we get, the emails and the questions, are things that have been asked from before. So it's able to where she can easily answer that stuff. And then the more technical stuff, it'll probably usually get me involved. She'll at least send a Voxer to me and ask me a certain question, and I can point her in the right direction. I'm a big fan of technology in general, but Voxer has been a huge thing. It's kind of funny because, Nextel or whoever they were, 10, 15 years ago were ahead of their time, because now everyone loves Voxer, walkie-talkie and back and forth. Mm-hmm. It's just a time saver. But so she's the one that's answering most of the stuff. Then I've got someone in the background that's doing some of the technical CRM stuff. We're in the midst right now of getting an additional CRM guy that's going to be full-time. At the end of the day, it'll just allow for more integrations. It'll allow for me to kind of start testing out some bigger items that, we're going and chasing after right now to put into the CRM. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, setting up the CRM is a procedure, and I've got it all mapped out. I've got the videos on how to do it. So it's something where as long as they've got some background in the Podio and coding, they can follow the videos and paint by number, and it's not that hard for them to do it at this point. But, it did take hundreds of hours, honestly, to build out what it is now. It was a lot of going to masterminds, and I'm a part of a private one where I simply asked, what is it that you guys are looking for in a CRM? Because there was a lot of frustration with the guys that were not technical, like myself. They're just too complicated. I hate going into them. I can't figure out how to click certain buttons. I just want it simple. And so I worked with them, kind of bounced some ideas off of what they were thinking and what they wanted, and I built it. And the response from everyone seems to be that it was pretty good at filling that need, because at this point, like I said, I think we're at 430 using members at this point. Part of the big why was for my daughter, and at this point, rental income is great as well, but monthly reoccurring on software is really good too. So
yeah, that's awesome. Me and my buddy Corey Moody were just talking about trying to figure out, because real estate's our game, but another reason why I started this podcast was to learn from other entrepreneurs, find out what everybody else is doing, and kind of learn from their obstacles as well. And we were talking about trying to figure something out aside from building a rental portfolio. And he's talking about building a cold call platform out of the Philippines. But we've been talking about return income, mailbox money, essentially, aside from rental portfolios.
Yeah, I have a rental in North Carolina, and it's in a military town where I've never had an issue with filling it. I literally just had renters move out, I think 2-3 weeks ago, and there's renters already moving back right in behind them. So I have the rentals, and if I were to ever buy more, they would be in military towns just because of my background in the military. I know how it works. I know they get paid a certain amount of money every month, and overall they generally are clean. And for me, if you stay on the outer areas, a lot of the younger guys don't want to live that far out from base, but the older guys do, because they want to get away from base when they're off and not working. And if you stay in those other areas out in the suburbs, a lot of times you've got the older guys that have been in the military for 8-10 years, whatever, and they got a family, and they're easy to deal with, and they pay every month, and it's not a bad deal. But unfortunately, that one got nailed by the hurricane a little bit. So we've got roof and floors and things like that are getting replaced right now. But new family will move in January, and we'll keep on rolling with that one. Rentals are good, but at the end of the day, you can always have that phone call of air conditioned heat and everything else that breaks. So, the software platforms and reoccurring revenue in general in other areas is definitely kind of where I think I have found that I really like doing certain things like that.
Yeah.
REI Automation was kind of my baby that I figured out. And then, Easy Button, my partner and I are both a part of that. And that's now kind of the new thing that we're trying to build content, make sure that it's something that people want. Still trying to figure that out a little bit, but, we're getting there, and fail a little bit and move forward and make it better. And it's been interesting to build those kind of platforms out. And I foresee that that's kind of where I'm headed. That's what excites me. Honestly, the wholesaling stuff, it's fun. It is cool. I like to see the deals come in. I like to see the checks come in, but it's transactional, and you're chasing the next every single time.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, enough about the CRM there. We've beat that one a little bit. You talked about wholesaling just now, and you said in the beginning you've got a brokerage out in, you said Wisconsin?
Correct.
Yep. Your partnership on a brokerage out there.
Yep.
Explain why you decided to build that out and what it looks like.
Yeah. So the brokerage is a fairly small independent one. Sole purpose was to build it out, be able to take down properties, buy them, and then basically do paint, carpet, and maybe one big ticket item, and then put them back up on the market. Obviously, that was about maybe 2 years ago. That was kind of when the market was really hot, and a lot of people were taking stuff down and just cleaning it up and throwing it back on the market. For us, my partner was a broker, real estate attorney, so she was able to obviously have the brokerage under her name. We're partners in that, but she's the broker in charge, and we could list it and save a little bit on the back end. We do have 3 agents that are working under that company. Mm-hmm. So we do have the agents to do the open houses and things like that, and listed on the MLS for us. But really started that company for the sole intent purpose of using it as the investment side to take down properties, resell them, working with people to send off leads sometimes that we don't want to work, that are more retail leads, and either get a commission or get some type of referral fee from it because she is licensed.
Yep.
And then just in general, we were kind of the mind that we foresee long term that they're probably going to bring down some laws where it would be good to have that and just avoid what could come if you didn't have it. I mean, there's that battle back and forth of I don't want to be licensed, I do want to be licensed. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you've got to pick and choose your battles, and that one we just chose to go the route of let's be licensed and not worry about it.
Yeah.
So that one's only been for about 2 years. But it's definitely been something that's helped us with, expenses on the monthly. We can obviously capitalize on a lot more leads than a typical person that's not licensed.
Right. Yeah. No, that's pretty important. Because a good portion of my leads have been foreclosures, and they're not all being foreclosed on the following month. And at the end of the day, I'm going into that house to make sure that the situation is a win-win for both of us, primarily them. And so, I don't know, last year I think I did, just under 10 listings last year, just out of default because they had more than 2 months to play with for their time frame. And it just made more sense for them to list it. So
Yeah.
I started out licensed, and in the beginning I thought about just letting my license go. But at the end of the day, it's benefited me. I got the listings, as well as I think it builds a little bit of confidence from some sellers knowing that you are licensed.
Agree.
Yeah. And like you said, they're trying to crack down on wholesalers. And they're always making new laws to make it harder. And just go ahead and go in there with a license and cover your bases.
Right. And so for us, that for us, when we go into an appointment, we're able to kind of offer multitude of options and what best fits them. And there are times where we come into houses where, they just spent 40 grand on upgrades, and it's like, well, cash offer, do they absolutely need to move today, 7 days, whatever, something that makes sense, relocating, or do they have some time? And at the end of the day, what best fits them is a listing. Okay, if that's the case, then let's list it. And we've got some people in-house that can do that.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 10 grand, whatever the listing outcome is for the commission, it covers the marketing costs, it covers some things like that. So, sometimes it makes sense, especially we've got a couple agents working with us. So then it makes sense if they can do the work and list it and go to some of these open houses. It's not that big of a deal. But overall, it's not something I will say that we're overly marketing for or chasing. At one point in time, we had the intent and thought that we were going to build out a brokerage and have 100, 200 people. And we went down that realm, had a bunch of agents with us, and figured out quickly that's just not what we want. And you've got to figure out and be able to be okay with, okay, this is what I thought I wanted, not it. Once you figure out that you've gone into it and adjust from that. Because there's no sense in doing a bunch of stuff you don't want to do. That was the whole point of getting in business and getting away from, going to work every day. You want to be able to enjoy it and get up and do it. Most people right now, it's Monday morning and they're all screaming that they don't want to go to work and they don't want to deal with this and that. I love it. I'm getting to get up. I talk with you, and then I'm going to go take my daughter to school, and I'm a car guy. So she's going to pick out one of the cars that we have to go take her to school, and we'll go and take her to school. And then the boys are at home with me. They're off today. So I get to enjoy a little bit of time with my family and not be the one that's complaining about a Monday and I don't want to go to work.
Exactly. I think that's why I think that's why most entrepreneurs get into entrepreneurship, is because some form of freedom, whatever their definition may be. But family being a guiding object for most people, I would say.
Yeah. It's, I've got 2 daughters and then the 2 boys. And this year I wound up coaching flag football for the youngest boy. And the schedule with the practices and some of the games and stuff like that, there's no way I would have been able to do that with the jobs that I had before. A lot of the jobs I had were salary jobs, and you were having to work oftentimes 10, 12-hour days. And it was not something you could just take off and be like, okay, today I'm going to go do this, and then I'm going to do that Wednesday, Thursday, and it's just no way I could have done it. And my daughter's in soccer, and so for the daughter to be in soccer, the boy to be in football, to jump around back and forth to those practices, it just would have never happened with some of the jobs I had in the past. So definitely grateful to have that opportunity. And that's partly why the software stuff too. I mean, at the end of the day, if I've got internet, I can literally go anywhere and be okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not a beach goer. That's not my thing. I'm more of the mountain guy. So a lot of times we'll grab a cabin up in the mountains. There's 2 or 3 of them about 45 minutes to an hour and a half from our house, and we'll grab a cabin and go up there for long weekends and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, perfect. Yeah. That's what we do. We just travel a lot.
Yeah.
with our free time. So and I think we're both like the beaches, but at the end of the day, it's the mountains that we're gravitating towards. And right now we live in the flat, boring ass Texas, but um, we're looking at moving next summer, or this coming summer. And one of my top locations for me personally would be Squamish, BC, just south
Okay.
of Whistler, BC.
Okay.
And it's like the outdoor capital of North America. Um,
Yeah.
it's freaking awesome, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
Believe it or not, we're actually long-term plan. And last year was a 5-year plan. We're down to 4, and this is hard line in the sand. We are moving. We're going back to Wisconsin. So,
Yeah.
The Southern California thing, it sounds good in theory, and it's fun to go and visit, but to live in it and have to deal with the traffic and just people all over. We're fortunate enough to live kind of in an area where we have a half acre plus, which is uncommon in Orange County, California. But at the same time, I can still look left and right and see my neighbors, and that's too close for me. So where I grew up, we had a lot of land. And so I want to go back. We've already started looking 20 plus acres, kind of do a family compound thing, buy a couple properties, houses, whatever, build on the same land, and everybody kind of live on one area, kind of hang out with the family, things like that. But we're already starting to see, market shift a little bit and flatten out. So, we'll use what we've learned in the marketing and being able to pull lists and things like that. And honestly, once it starts to shift downward, we'll pull a list and start marketing and try to find our own property. And more than likely at that point with a downshift, owner finance, something like that, 20 plus acres.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's land. That's what I want to. Land in the mountains. Well, growing up and still to this day, I'd like to own a mountain. I don't know what that entails, but I want that mountain to be mine with the pond on it, which would be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's, the pond is one of the big things, definitely. And, my girlfriend has definitely got her idea on the house, and I kind of let her run with that. She was military. We're both military. She was Army. She lived in a Fisher house, and the one she lived in down in Texas is big. And she wants pretty much an example of that as her house. And, I'm fine with that. I just told her, don't expect all of us to be cleaning that monster. You better have somebody behind you cleaning it. But for me, I'm a car guy. So my dad had a street rod shop, had old cars, muscle cars. That's what I grew up at, car shows, things like that. I've got a couple of hot rods myself now. But we, plan on for sure having a fairly large garage. And, my happy place is ultimately out in the garage, hanging out with my dad and kids and things like that, and doing things with your hands. When I did work construction, that was kind of what I enjoyed, is watching stuff grow and build and watch it because of you doing certain things. It was nothing, and now it's this beautiful house, whatever. So there was that fun, but for me, the car thing is definitely my go-to and what I actually enjoy. And we seem to be ever buying and getting bored and buying different ones and switching them out. So we just went out last week, actually. My girlfriend wanted a 02 Trans Am WS6, which is kind of a sports version. Back in the day of the Trans Am, back in high school, I wanted it. I graduated in 03. It was one of my dream cars back then, and happened to get a really good price on it. And I went and bought her the car last week, and we're starting to do some of the stuff on it for her. So that's her car.
Yeah. No, I like those growing up too. Did I see you've got 1,000 horsepower SS, or is it another Trans Am as well?
The buddy of so a guy introduced me into somebody that has 1,000 horsepower turbo Trans Am to talk to him, because we've got some ideas that we want to do with the one I've got. It's a super simple platform that they make every kind of bolt on you could imagine. So it's pretty easy. And we will. She's got to get used to what it is already. I've got my daily driver's a 500 horsepower Chrysler SRT8. And so the kids, that makes it easy because it's got the bench seat. When you've got 3 kids, it's hard to find stuff that's sporty and still have the room for them. And then big lifted truck, and old F100 that's got 500 horsepower. And then I do have a older Ford Fairlane that's got 1,100 horsepower that we're building. So I've got my toys, and that's my go-to. I'm not out at the casino. I'm not out with a lot of people doing much, but I work and hang out with family and cars. That's my thing.
Yeah. I don't have many cars, but I finally just bought my dream truck that I've been dreaming about probably for 8 years, probably since they came out. But I finally got the Ford Raptor.
Okay.
So
did you get the white one? Is that the one that you got? Yeah. My buddy out here in Southern California he drove to Nevada and got one out there because it was a lot less what they were asking out there at the dealerships versus Southern California. So, beautiful truck.
Yeah, we had ours brought in from Louisiana because we finally it's always been my dream to buy not only the Raptor but be able to custom pick out how it was built. And so the one I designed with the custom interior and all that stuff was in Louisiana, so we had it brought in, and it was cheaper out there for some reason. Typically they're like 80 grand. But
yeah, he was able to save almost, I think, I want to say 15 or 20 grand by going out of state. So
we saved about 15.
Yeah, it's crazy that you can go a couple states over and save that kind of money. You know, at the end of the day, when we're searching for real estate or searching for something else, I think we're always looking for a good deal. So it's definitely been one of those things where, you know, even last week when we bought what we bought, we drove 2.5 hours one way just to go get it up there. There's plenty of them around our area, but I mean, we saved $5 grand just off of what everyone else was asking by driving 2.5 hours. And so it was definitely worth it. I got to hang out with a really good friend of mine and drive and hang out. And we came back and, you know, he got lucky. He was in my SRT 8300 and he stepped on it right next to a cop, not knowing a cop was next to him. And the cop just hit the lights and was kind of like, hey, knock it off, and let him go. Didn't do nothing. But, you know, it was kind of fun just to experience it, get out with him and enjoy.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I always ask everybody the same thing. Because I named the podcast the Fearless Pursuit of Freedom, because I feel like I said earlier, most entrepreneurs are on that pursuit of freedom. But what does freedom mean to you? And if you had 6 months to live, what would you do with it? So it's kind of on the opposite sides of each other.
Yeah. Freedom. And for me, freedom was something that I thought I had one idea of. And when I got into things, I definitely had a different idea of. And there was somebody that recommended at the beginning of the year that I write down kind of what my perfect day would look like. And so I did that exercise. And for me, really, it's part of our, 5-year plan of move back to Wisconsin. I want to be able to be out and open up and get onto my porch, hang out in the morning, watch the sunrise, and then go out with my dad and my kids, whatever, into the garage and hang out and build things, build hot rods, build whatever, but build things. Yeah. And so, that freedom to be able to do that and have income still coming in is definitely the part of it. And being able to have that would basically make it to where, hey, that's my perfect day. I don't need anything big and fancy. I just need the house, the land, and be able to build some things with the family and be around the family. And I'm good at that point. And there's a number that takes, and I've figured out what that number is, and we're working towards that number every day, and we're pretty close actually. So, at some point I'll get to that number and we'll be able to move back, do what we need to do. And part of that will be Pops will move and sell his house, move in, and we'll have a house on our land for him. And that'll be the perfect day. And really at that point, I feel that I'll have my freedom at that point. Yeah. Chasing the ever number of, I need to have $1 million, $10 million. I just found that I got into that and I don't need it. And what I thought I needed, I don't. I'm super simple. I've wanted a Lamborghini for a long time, but at the end of the day, I know what comes with that maintenance wise. Mm-hmm. I'd rather rent it or lease it and have it be somebody else's problem. Right. And I'll probably do that at some point. So, if I had 6 months to live, it's going to shift a little bit. I've probably at this point got to say that I've got enough going that I think I would probably shut down and just go travel and enjoy life and, basically be around family and travel and have more experiences. A good friend of mine that some people might know is Haim Amin, and he's all about life experience. Don't collect things, collect memories. Mm-hmm. And he's part of a private group that we're in. And just the way he lives his life is definitely like every day I'm striving to try to get to something of what he's got. And he's, just done a really good job of making his family number one and travel and give them experiences. And ultimately, that's what they'll take with them. They're not going to remember that $300 thing that you bought for them. They're going to remember the memory that you built with them. So we try to travel, try to go to, Disney and some of these other events that they'll remember as kids that they got to go to. We've taken them all across the country at this point to different states. And sometimes when I travel for business, we'll make it a little bit longer trip than normal and go off and experience what the certain area has. So it's definitely for me is just getting the experiences and less focus on things.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Yeah, I think that's what I'm shooting for. More time to travel, more time to hang out with family. A few nice toys would be cool. The Lambo has always been a goal of mine, and I've rented them in the past. But yeah, get away from the big city life. I hate traffic. I won't even leave my town before 9 a.m. because I don't want to deal with that crap.
Yeah.
And if I do, I'm getting up an extra hour and a half early so I can leave the house before 6:30 a.m. just to avoid those things. So that's essentially where I'm headed for. I think the world is far too big for me not to explore it and figure, go see it all. But yeah, the freedom is why we're doing it. Most of us.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, the toys are great, and it does have some experience with it. So, my daughter at this point, when she gets to pick whatever vehicle in the morning, she's usually picking the hot rod. So she's got those experiences, and I know as a kid when I grew up around the hot rods, that was something that lasts with me, and it's something that I've enjoyed, and so it seems to be catching on with her. Yeah. So there's definitely some of the toys that bring some of those memories. It's just, I guess, a balance of not too many toys where you can't experience some of those other things with it because you can't afford to take them out. When it's 6 miles to the gallon, it takes a little bit to drive it around. So,
yeah.
But, local areas, local shows, it's fun to take it out, fun to take her out. And, even the kids, when we drop her off at school, I think she enjoys that a little bit too, is the kids kind of, ooh, that's cool looking. What is that? So,
yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a cool ride, and I think we're finally getting in the right step. We're not there yet, but we're in the right step, and I foresee, in the next couple of years, we'll be to a point where I think I've kind of made it to a point where I'm happy and the family's happy and we're good. You're always trying to make it to where for me, especially at this point with kids and all that other stuff and family, you always want to make sure that they're good and they've got what they need. And at the end of the day, I don't worry about the shoes and the clothes. I'm not a big shopper, but if the family's good, then I'm good at the end of the day,
Yeah, no, it's perfect, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, sharing little insights about business and the hardships of getting there and on that, the path to freedom. And I think 4 years is too long. I think the way you're going, you'll be there sooner. So, I hope you do, as long as that fits into your plan. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing, man.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, dude.